Robin Vincent and welcome to Molten Music Technology. I am completely out of my comfort zone here and in the kitchen. I'm not understanding how the light works or how the camera, does that look any good? The sound, it's all in a different place. And what I've done is that I've gathered together all of the little synths that I've been working on and fiddling with over the last few weeks and thought I would put them together for a bit of a kitchen tabletop synthesizer fest. The plan is to work with these things kind of over the summer, I think, and see what it is I can make of them. Can I make music? Can I sequence them? How can I address them independently, address them together? How do I sequence them, arrange them, put them together? Do they sound good together? Are they usable in this kind of workflow where increasingly our lives are filling up with little desktop synthesizer noise making machines? How do you fit it all together? How do you make it work? And what sort of noise does it make? Well, I can tell you to start with that the setup of just 6 little synthesizers has taken me 2 hours this morning. Suddenly I'm reminded of why it was that we quite liked the idea of just taking a laptop to a gig. That seemed quite cool. Whereas, I mean, there's the powering of things. I have to say, synthesizers that don't come with their own power supplies, that sucks. I mean, I'm pointing at you, things like the the Skulpt, the CraftSynth. You've got to find things from somewhere. I've got to find, I happen to have this power pack that's got a whole load of USB cables in it that enabled me to power these things once I'd found the appropriate cables, because they didn't necessarily come with them. Then there's questions of MIDI. How do we get MIDI out from one place to everything else, or from one synth to the rest? So I've got this RetroKits MIDI splitter here, which is a phenomenal thing. And I have this octopus of MIDI cables knocking around and feeding all sorts of different bits and pieces. How do you get that to work? Came across a MIDI cable that wasn't working. How is it that MIDI cables don't work? When does that happen? And then you've got to be able to hear everything. So I've got everything going through this tiny little mixer. I've got here a Sub-Zero mixer from Gear for Music. And I mean, it's all right. It's a bit noisy. I don't really have enough channels because I very much like to incorporate a couple of effects pedals as well. And I don't think I have quite enough channels for that, at least not quite yet. So I'm going to have a bit of a rethink about that, I think. But otherwise, while it's going to work, it will do something and it mixes sounds together. So what more could I possibly want? Normally speaking, when I'm recording in the shed, I'm going straight into my main computer and I understand all of that and understand how that works. Here, I'm using this recorder thing that I got picked up for the Thomann synth show thing and I never actually used it, never got it out of the box, never actually used it. And so here I am using that for the first time for the sound. I've no idea whether that's going to work. Like I say, I've no idea about the light in here. It's kind of extraordinary, but it looks really dull on the camera. I'm not really sure what I'm doing with that, but that's by the by. This is the beginning of this project and hopefully this will improve and get better. I mean, we've even got a light here, right, that I can get really close to. Doesn't seem to make any difference because this place is already, I guess, flooded with light, but not in the same way. Oh, I don't know. I'll scratch my head about that later. But anyway, the plan for today is purely over the course, hopefully, of not more than the next hour, because like the kids are going to be home and stuff. I'm going to attempt to create a drone, just a drone. They'll all be playing one note and then I'm just going to go around and fiddle and modulate and see what occurs. The choice of sound has been absolutely arbitrary. I've not thought about it in any depth. I've just gone through a few presets on the ones that have presets in order to find a sound which can be gated open and isn't doing crazy sequences or arpeggiators or all those sorts of bits and pieces. And the ones which don't have that, like this one and this one, I've just opened it up and hope that sort of works. So that's the plan. Play them all together, stick down a note over there with a bit of sticky tape, and we'll go. So let me introduce you to what we have on the table. Assuming you can see all of that. I think you can, just about. And you'll get to know these better as I go around with my trusty GoPro thing. Stick it on the head, looking at things. So we have, for this experiment, we have the Rare Waves Hydronium. I did a video on this the other day. It's a great little, like an Acid 303 synth, but it just makes a lovely analog sound. I've got the CraftSynth2 from Model. great little synth. Digital wavetable, interesting to see how that one pans out. The MicroFreak from Arturia, which everybody knows by now, I think. The MS-101 from Behringer, which, considering that these are all similarly priced synthesizers, it's huge and heavy and solid in comparison to everything else. But this is analog, going to make analog sounds. I've then got a Skulpt from Modal, which could potentially create 4-voice chords, but I'm just giving it one note at the moment. And then I've got the little Uno synth from IK Multimedia at the end. Fantastic. That is the 6th in this instance. It may change over time. I might do other projects with other synths. I do not know at this point. Just going to have to see how it goes. And it's all being controlled. Well, I only need one note, but the only MIDI controller I have that actually has a MIDI output is the Nectar. This thing here. Nectar Tech Panorama T4. Because everything else I've got just has USB. So there we are. That's the plan. I'm just going to stick my headphones on, so I don't have any proper speakers over here I can plumb into easily. So, and that's how it's going to be. I hope no one comes to the door, because I won't be able to hear anything. And I'm just going to get stuck in, moving things about, and we'll see how that goes. Enough talking. Enough talking. Let's see whether we can actually make some sound. Yes. Well, I don't know about you, but I had a lovely time. That was extraordinary. I mean, interesting, a bit fudgy in places, muddy in places, difficult to pick out what you could hear, what you could not hear. But the way things worked with each other, I thought it was great, the way things crashed into each other, trying to pull out different forms of modulation, trying to pull out and pinpoint bits and pieces and something interesting to do on each one. I mean, I think that the cutoff obviously becomes the first port of call. You want to sweep because you want to be able to hear that change in harmonics going on. Yeah, interesting. Had a bit of trouble with the MicroFreak because I accidentally changed patch and that seemed to kill the sound, which is a shame. But, you know, got that restarted and then it formed kind of the basis of everything else in some ways. I think perhaps what you need to do if I was to do this again was to start with one and then build up, rather than having everything playing at once, which is what I did to start with. I mean, I brought them in separately, but my intention was to have them all going at once. And actually some of the interest came later on when I took things out and then brought back things in again. I don't know. It's just an interesting exercise, I think. The other thing that becomes important is knowing the synths as well, being able to tease out the right sort of sound. Because, for instance, on the MS-101, I know that very well, and so that was quite easy to do something interesting with. Same with the Hydronium, because it's simple, straightforward, and analog. It's obvious what you do on that. The digital synths, more difficult to dig into exactly what you're after, because you can't do it by feel. You have to select the right knob and start playing with that. So that has a different feel to it. And I think I'm going to need to get to know the Skulpt better, the CraftSynth better, MicroFreak better as well, just to enable this to work better, particularly in getting more familiar with the modulation systems, particularly in the modal stuff, because I'm currently unsure, you know, which, am I on shift, not on shift, is which label what, how do I assign things to this, that and the other. Those are things I need to get the hang of in order to make a better movement, get better animation and stuff going on. But all in all, I think it inspires me to work a bit harder at these synths. And I can't just assume that I can pull off something awesome just like that. I have to have a go, have to try, have to work at it a bit more, work on each synth individually, come up with some good ideas and then bring those together. But I think as this series develops, I'll be able to do a bit more of that. I mean, the next step from here is to bring some kind of sequence in, see how that works. Sequencers, don't know yet. We shall see. Anyway, I hope that was mildly interesting. I'm going to go off and put this away because I have about half an hour before the kids turn up, and in the meantime, go make some tunes.